have to make with somebody every day, and everybody that you meet, where you can kind of figure where you're coming from. Where are you today? There was a school, I believe it was Kitwicks Park. On the wall, they had that kind of chart you're talking about. And they had asked the kids, where are you? Like, there was different faces. You know, like, sad, anxious, scared, but they're just different things. I'm worried, or I'm hungry, I'm tired. And it's a place where you can start a conversation with somebody and say, this is where I am today. Because none of us are on every day. Everyone's human. Some people deal with a lot more than other people do.
Because I be feeling like they be trying to force the work on us. Like, it's never, like, I understand they want us to get our degrees, like our high school diploma, go to college, get a college degree, but it's never really like that serious when it comes to life. Because we can get our high school diploma, and then we'll be so mad and so sad and all that, and we'll have nothing to do for it. I just feel like whoever running for school board should put something in school where it can lead every, not just one person, so it can lead everybody in the school to success. That's what I need, or that's what I want in the school. And because I want to see not one person, everybody succeed. I want to see everybody I'm growing up with now that I see as kids. I want to see them as adults having something going for themselves. If they have kids in there, I want to see that they're still having something going for themselves, having something they can fall back on, having a way that they can get to college. I just feel like it'd be a lot of stress when they get to like the end of the school, but they be worried about having to pay for college.
What's the next step?
Yeah.
Every time you change a phase in your life, it is stressful. It very much is. Those are really good insights. And I think having individual kids, like all you guys, tell people what does success look like. And the other part of it is what I love about what you said is the idea that everyone can be successful. Like there's not just this much success.
Yeah.
And if somebody gets it, somebody else doesn't.
Because even say I'm gonna put it like this, I'm gonna use us for example. Say he's doing good, he got straight A's, he's doing good, all that. Say like I'm like in the middle, like I have some problems going on, but say like he a bad kid. See, if he was to be a bad kid, then nah, I ain't saying like he is bad, because I make sure like all of us doing good. But I'm just saying like as an example, like say he's a bad kid, they're gonna look at him like, oh, he's not gonna have. He like say we in high school now, so it's all about credits. So they're gonna look at him like, oh, he doing this, he doing that, so he have bad credit. Instead of looking at it like, oh, he doing this, so let's see what's wrong with him. Let's see what is it that he need help with? Is it days that he need to, you know what I'm saying, calm down away from work, like just to have. I feel like it should be a chill day. Like Friday should be a chill day. We get our work done. Friday should be a chill day. Like get our
heard
mind
other people
together.
say Wednesday.
I think Friday.
Like Friday.
When I feel like Wednesday was rocker today. We'll shake. If we were doing good Monday and Tuesday, I feel like Wednesday was shaking.
Break your stride.
Because you say we'll be chill for one day, then we'll come back to school and we'll be ready and be prepared. Because we were like,
my bad, I ain't mean to cut you off. When you in school though, you forget you got these certain after. Really and truly, you lose track of the fact that outside of this, I got real things going on in my life. But if you go to school and the only thing you're thinking about is stuff outside of school, that's a problem. You see what I'm saying? So I feel like that's a problem where we can fit.
Do you think, I've had some kids tell me this, do you think that the schools don't help you enough plan your day, plan after your day, like break your day out, I need to do this in the morning, after I do school, then I'm going to need to do this, and just do your schedule. Because I feel my kids are that they feel nobody helps them try to do it. Nobody's born knowing how to do that. Right? There's not. So somebody's got to do it. People have different ways to keep track of it. Some people like it all in their phone. Some people like to have a whiteboard. Some people, like to have a little paper. Somebody's got to help you organize your life. Because that doesn't happen.
And you can tell nowadays, though, like, instead of them trying to evolve with this new generation, they trying to control it. You see what I'm saying? Like, I had a teacher So, and I'm glad you asked because I was in class earlier today, and I finished every assignment. So if I finish every assignment, rightfully so, I'm gonna just kill time until I need to go do more, until my next period. So since I finished all my assignments for the day, got no missing work in the class, I'm gonna just sit here, not bother nobody, mind my business. Take out a notebook, start drawing. She comes over there. Here's my notebook. And said, "Why are you drawing?" To be honest, I really was about to flip out, but I was like, "Nah, it's a better way we can do it." So, Mr. Flowers, the teacher of the class, I got a lot of respect for Mr. Flowers, right? Because he tell it as it is. Mr. Flowers, he was talking to me earlier about how they know that we're not prepared for this exam coming up, and they don't want to do anything about it. So she comes in there and does an inspection. And so when she did that, when she asked me that, I immediately looked at her with disgust, because I was about to say something that I didn't really need to say. But instead, I asked her, I said, "Ma'am, can I ask you a question?" And she said, "Yes." I said, "Is that how you approach it?" And when I asked her that, she said, "You're absolutely correct." And she said, "Hey, how are you doing? What's your name?" At that point, I didn't have nothing else to say. You see what I'm saying? Because I took the bullets out the gun. There was nothing left she could do. You see what I'm saying? So when I had her there, I just explained to her, like, one, that's not how you approach me. Two, I've already finished my work.
Well, it goes back to what you were saying earlier about how you gotta check in. You gotta be human.
You never know where nobody's going. Everybody's going through something, but as long as we don't talk about our problems and we just take it out on people, that's how the world just, that's how the people just slow. We shouldn't live like that. We should live in unity. You know, we should all live to where all of us can get along. And everybody, if you see somebody falling down, you pick them up. Cause I know that when I was in high school, I was a young person around none but people older than me, you know. So I was just really just trying to see like where they was going with it, you know, in school, like how they was moving, and I had to pick up on like I see the young, cause I'm in 11th grade, I got one more year and I'm out of high school, so I look at the young people, like I try to motivate them, like him. I had got kicked out school last year, but right now I'm back like trying to get it back together because I gotta graduate next year. Him, I don't want none of any young person around me. I don't want none of them to go through what I had to go through with school or make bad decisions. That's why I make sure they good every day. Like I make sure they good mentally. I make sure they physically ready for work. And even if they not, I push them. Ask them. I push them. I push them to work. I push him. I make sure that he do what he needs to do. But I just feel like I said, like sometimes I might not be there to push him. That's why I feel like it should be teaching, helping the kids, pushing the kids. Cause it be like an on and off thing. Someday they'll push the kids, the next day they mad, the next day they push the kids. Then it be like you can't do that. You can't just have a wishy-washy vibe. Kids, us as kids, we gonna do what kids gonna do. We having our fun. Cause once we get out of high school and we don't have nothing else to do, we're in life. Life gonna hit us hard. So right now we should have our fun when we can.
Have your fun, but also know that the rest of your life, you're also going to be able to enjoy that as well. Yes, things change. It's not the same again now going to school, seeing your friends' lives. But you still keep learning and you can, it's still enjoyable. It's not like you don't fall off a cliff. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I realized
No,
that.
it's good. It's good. But I was about to say though, that goes back to what you were saying. Like, it's not just
Good. How are you? Yeah. It's good to see you.
Right. Atlanta traffic is not good. How are you? Good. I knew he would go for the cookie first. I knew he would go for the cookie first. Because that's what he did. That's what he did in Dad's garage.
No, Peter pre-gamed it mad though. He was like, "Oh yeah, they got tons of snacks. Go get it."
Oh, yo, can I get?
All right. How we doing? Yeah, we good. We good. It's a Wednesday night. It's a little chilly outside, but we'll heat up in here in just a second. We are so grateful that you are here with us today. I really want to thank you all for taking time out of your day to be here in what I think is one of the more important things that is happening in the next couple of weeks, or not even a couple of weeks, 1 week. What do we got? 1 week in Atlanta. My name is Rohit Malhotra. I'll be moderating the conversation today. I'm the executive director at the Center for Civic Innovation. We are joined by an incredible staff and team of folks. Can you all just give it up for the team one time, please? Amazing. We have our policy team in the back that will be fact-checking throughout. So if you see me looking over there and getting some answers, you'll know where I'm getting that from. But just want to let you know that how important this conversation is for us. I also want to give a big shout out to our community partners who, are true MVPs of this. Want to shout out Capital B, which has been telling stories the way they need to be told for a long time. So shout out to Capital B, amazing. I also want to shout out again in the name of local journalism. Atlanta Civic Circle has also been doing incredible work, just documenting and getting information throughout this entire election cycle, and have been partners of ours for a long time. So big shout out to Atlanta Civic Circle. I want to also, the folks at Hopeful Change are also part of this conversation, and then I can't forget the Hey crew. Y'all should just change it to A. I think that's right. Yeah. I don't know about Hey. Let's take the H. We'll brand it later. So it's fine. I'm gonna do it and then sell it. It's gonna be great. So I just want to ground us in a couple things, and then we'll jump in. So today's conversation is not your traditional debate structure. We're not here to feel who can we get to get the right zinger so you can figure out who won this match. That is not what today is about. The Center for Civic Innovation was created now 9 years ago, grounded in the idea that we could reimagine what this city could be and reimagine what public policy in this city could look like. And when you want to reimagine what public policy could look like, a huge part of that is, number one, making sure that we're all grounded in good information, that we actually know what's going on and what's not going on, but that we also use that information to hold people accountable, that if that's what's going on or if that's how things work, do you know that? And also, what are you willing to do with that information? And then the third is taking that information and making sure that public policy, which is the decisions that a lot of elected officials make on a day-to-day basis, that it reflects what people actually need and where we're at right now. Trust is at historic lows with public institutions. Folks don't trust people who are elected at this point. We see that. We see it in the numbers. So what today is about is not saying whether one of these candidates is qualified and the other one is not. Both are brilliant human beings who we're going to have an opportunity to really understand who are they, where are they coming from in this work, what do they actually hope to accomplish, and what's their plan to get there. And so for those of y'all who may not like that type of storytelling, you could tune out now, I would say. If you've already made your decision on who it is that you are voting for, that's fine. But I can also say as a voter in this city that I have not made my decision yet on who I think would be the best candidate to represent us in this position. And I think there's a lot of people who are in that position today as well. So this is an opportunity to get to know these folks, tell that story to a bunch of other folks, and make sure you vote. You can still early vote by this Friday. So there are select locations across DeKalb and Fulton where you can vote. And then you'll be able to, if you can't vote by this Friday early, you can vote on Tuesday, which is election day. Cool? All right, when can we early vote by? Friday. And when is the election? Tuesday. All right, y'all are amazing.
Well
Y'all,
done.
look what you did for my nerdy little political heart. I love it. So again, thank you for being here, and thanks to the both of you. This is exhausting, I'm sure, right? We are less than a week away from allowing, y'all to just get to the next phase of doing the work, whether that's as a candidate for school board, or as a representative of the school board, or whether it is in your private life as an advocate, as both of you have been inside and outside of our school systems. So I want to start by grounding us in the question of why do you do this? What drives you to do public service? It's not something you have to do. There's a lot of other things you probably could be doing. Why public service for you? And I'll start with you, Shivy.
Well, first off, thank you for everyone being in attendance. Like, it's nice to see the room filled up with almost no empty seats, and so many folks eager to hear from the two of us. My name is Alfred Shivy Brooks, and I'm running for Atlanta Public School Board seat 7 at large because I was brought up understanding that I have a responsibility to the village, that I don't have the privilege of individuality, that my existence and the greatness of my existence is completely tied with the opportunities given to others, the outcomes for their lives. And I measure myself based upon what is it that I do to impact positively the others who are around me.
Where does that come from for you, Shivy? Like, where's that grounded in? Like, when did you start knowing that public service was something that was something you were trying to do?
When I went to high school, we used to have something called smaller learning communities.
Okay.
And they were kind of like schools within a school, kind of similar to like IB program type stuff we have now, or tracks, right? And I was a part of something called the CGI, which is the Civics and Government Institute in my high school. So from your sophomore year to your senior year, we had like a mock government. We elected folks, and we worked on campaigns. I spent, very much like my students, I have two of my students here who have been with me the entire campaign, knocking doors, meeting voters. That's how I started.
Yeah.
I was 15, 16 years old, knocking doors for Democratic candidates, meeting people, and I immediately had the realization of, you can have real systemic long-term impact through policy. And it encouraged me after a good friend of mine, Sonny Ricks, was murdered in 2007. He was a senior at Stone Mountain High School. When I was living in Stone Mountain at the time, he lived with his grandmother beneath me in an apartment. And this kid viewed me as a mentor, and I was the cool guy because I was a 106 and Park Freestyle Friday Hall of Famer and all this cool stuff. I was the rapper in the neighborhood.
Oh, just you wait for the next phase of this question. I can't wait.
And I'm glad we don't have time for this right now.
Yeah.
So Sonny was murdered by another teen.
Yeah.
And I ended my ambition to do music on that day.
Got it.
And I became completely fixated on making sure that our schools, our communities are safe and prosperous places for Black and brown children to thrive.
Yep.
And that for me prompted me to go back to school, finish my degree in public policy at the Andrew Young School of Public Policy at Georgia State, prompted me to work as a legislative aide, prompted me to work at the YMCA.
We'll get to kind of what you've done, but feel grounded in kind of this. This started at a young age for you.
Correct.
How about for you, Tamara? Where does public service come from for you? Where does this step from?
Well, I went to public schools in 3 different states, so I moved around a lot when I was growing up. So I got to learn.
Where were you?
I went to elementary school in Cartersville, Georgia, and then I went to middle school in New Jersey and high school in Connecticut.
Got it.
So moving around a lot, you get to know a lot of different people, a lot of different just ways of being, and just sort of that study of humanity, from a very early age. Just what are people about? Where are they coming from? What's happened to them? Why do they do things certain ways that they do? And then when I went to college, I went to Wake Forest University, and one of the professors there was Dr. Maya Angelou, and she embodied completely the motto of that school, which is these great boys here at Hay. San Antonio really gave me a lot of life advice. I realized that what you were talking about, while I was raising the kids to the school and watching what was going on and how things were run in politics, that that trust was broken.
Yeah.
And
but for you, it starts where? It was in college, or it was at a younger than that? What was the moment where you were like, public service is really the direction I want to go, or is it something you're...
It's just kind of in everything that I've done. Yeah, so, as I was after college, even when I was in my career, so architect, urban planner, I would do committees, within the city where we would, study, just volunteer work for, city council committees and, doing, city planning.
So you've always had some sort of exposure to it. Got it.
Yes.
Can you, so much of this work doesn't just affect us, it affects our families and, the folks that we're, spending our day-to-day with. Tell us a little bit about your family. Like, tell us about, who raised you, who do you take after the most? Is it a particular parent? Is it a grandparent? Is it who influences you?
Oh, man.
Like, who would say, Tamara's exactly like...
I'm a lot like my grandfather.
Okay. Tell us about your grandfather.
My grandfather was, he was born in 1903, so he lived a long time.
We were both born in the 1900s, so that's great. Yeah.
But he grew up on a farm in Commerce, Georgia, and he was not able to go to high school, and ended up going to what was then the Berry Industrial School for Boys. So it's now Berry College. But at the time, it was a philanthropic school that Martha Berry ran for poor mountain children, so they could get the work, were able to work for an education. And so he got kind of a combination of high school and trade school, and ended up, working in the world and stuff like that. But that education experience he instilled in me from a very early age. Would take me down to Berry and show me, because that's where I was born in Rome, show me, where like the beginning of his life really started, was with that education. And would just always surround me. Like I still have his 1930s Encyclopedia Americanus. So, I remember going through them, just reading everything. He just devoured learning his entire life. Yeah. And was just always talking about how that's the key to life. Yeah,
for sure. Do you have siblings, Shivy?
Yeah.
Yeah? How many siblings do you have?
I have 3 siblings. I have an older brother, a younger brother, and a younger sister.
So you're a middle. Are you a middle child? Is that? What do you say? What is that when there's 4 and you're in the top 2? What's the?
My father was married 3 times.
Okay, gotcha.
And I'm the product of my father's second marriage.
Okay.
So while I have 3 other siblings, I also very much had like a only child upbringing as well. legacy work. I live to village. I've always been on purpose about understanding that the systemic issues that impact, especially my community and communities of color in general, can only be addressed long term through policy. So we can march in the streets as long as we want, and I've been marching since '91 here in Atlanta when King happened. That was the first march I went to with my dad. But there's so many times you can march before you have to run. And so there's only so much pleading with public servants, people in power to do a specific thing, especially to the good of the community. And so many times that you'll see them ignore the obvious right decision before you decide that that person doesn't deserve to be there and you're more equipped to do it instead.
So, I mean, you've talked about the fact that at the end of the day, right, you still did make a conscious decision at a certain point for a political aspiration. That doesn't mean a bad or a good thing. But you decided, I want to be in politics. I want to be in the game. I want to be in the arena. Was running for council your first race, or have you run for something before that?
No, for council was my first race. And
what made you decide to do that?
My students.
Okay. They said, Mr. Brooks, you need to do it?
In 2020, shortly after George Floyd was murdered, we here in Atlanta experienced Rayshard Brooks being murdered. And I was there that night. Shortly after he was killed, I got a call from my friend Christian Watt Smith, who had run for district attorney at the time. And he said, 2 o'clock in the morning or something, Shivy, the community is about to go up in fire. I need you to come down here and help bring a calm.
Yeah. That's
the kind of trust that I have in our community and presence. So at 2 o'clock in the morning, I get in my bed, I tell my wife I'm leaving, and she's telling me, no, don't do it. It is the responsibility to the village, so I show up. And we brought calm that evening. Unfortunately, 2 days later, we all know what happened. But it was in marching in the street with my students for 180 consecutive days thereafter.
Yeah.
Hoping for a police reform bill, hoping for some more changes, and having students working with me along these streets in Atlanta where we can see the differences between the west side and the east side, the differences between the north side and downtown. And they're pointing out all these things because when you march through the streets, it's a very different perspective than driving through the streets. If you've done it, then you know what I'm talking about.
So for you, it was your students that drove you and your advocacy in the streets.
Absolutely.
I'll come back to that. So, Tamara, for you, you've worked in urban planning. You've worked kind of more on the periphery of government, right? But what made you want to go on this side of it? Why, especially if you've been spending so much time and built up expertise on kind of the outside of it, what prompts you as an urban planner, as a someone who works in architecture, to say, I want to go to school board? Where did that come from? It feels like you wouldn't necessarily put those two things together.
Well, the other thing I've done, for the last 17 years is work in the schools. So
what prompted you to do that?
Work in the schools.
Yes.
Having kids
Okay.
in PS and getting involved with the school system, getting involved with PTAs, with what was then local school councils, which was before we had the go-tos. Just helping the school operate, and it just grew from there. I started serving on district level committees. I served on the Excellent Schools Committee about 5 years ago. I served on the SLOST Oversight Committee for at least 6 years, to try to make sure that we were doing facilities in an equitable way, spending our money well, and working with people from all over the school district, getting to know the system, how it works, and what are the real opportunities for change, but also getting to work with people in the system and similar capacities as me all across the district, different clusters. And so I'm looking at myself, I'm trying to think of that day that I decided to run. It was probably May of 2020. And people were starting to announce they were running the school board, and there's just a lot going on. We had seen so much. I've been one of those parents, writing the letters and, working with my, colleagues to try to affect change within PS from that side. Really work collaboratively with other people on the parent advocate side, and finally decided, okay, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I have the background, I have the knowledge, I know the system. I have, that kind of skill set, and I have that, just that thing in me that said, this is the time, this is my opportunity to give what I have in that way. In sort of
in 2021, you were like, I'm running this year.
In service, in service to the community, I knew that I could make a difference in how the system operates, because that's really what the issues we were facing were systemic within APS.
So both of you have kind of said that you decided to run at a point of just frustration with the way the system actually operates right now. For you, it was waiting on a bill, waiting on change, like marching the streets, not seeing what you wanted to. For you, it's being inside of these advisory boards, these outside teams that are trying to figure out how to change government from the outside, but not necessarily seeing the change that you wanted to see. And then you both decide to run for office in 2021. In interest of making sure we get the audience engagement as well, we talked to Casey Bang, who is advisor friend of CCI. We talked to some of the young men at A, and a lot of the questions that were submitted by them was about whether you actually know how to work with and talk to young people. That seem real good at with adults in the room. You guys are good at the industry stuff. But kids want to know, and not just kids. Some of these folks are the person taking care of their family at home. Like, they don't get the privilege to be a kid right now. They want to know, and this question came as an amalgamation of the folks who, hey, like, they don't see themselves in this version of the school system and the government. It's just kind of like, well, we're going to do whatever they want, and we'll decide what we do next, right? What is it that you have in your experience, professional background, that allows you to actually ensure the voices of young people, particularly young black men in the city, will actually be in the way that you govern? So I'll start with you, Tamara, which is ask, how has that shown up now? What in your experience you say to the young men at Henry makes you a representative for them?
We were having a conversation before it started, and I walked out and I was like, you guys need to just go ahead and take the leads and, do stuff for you guys. Because really, we have to find all those ways to simplify those voices. And there is a divide between, kids who are in schools and people on the board from a distant perspective, but it doesn't have to be that way. We need to be able to hear from you in real time what your issues are.
How do you do that?
Right now, we've got been going on, it's actually been working out really well. They need to expand, and it's the Student Advisory Council. The Student Advisory Council actually had a lot more power than actually parents do in Atlanta schools, because they get together with the people who were chosen from different schools, high schools, and they get together and talk about
Choosing those folks.
the kids.
Okay, so students choose other students to serve the advisory council. Okay.
They choose the students. I think that there's a little more of a process to it than that, but and they bring the voices of their classmates into the discussion about that, the issues that are happening within the system and within the schools themselves. And they come to us and they talk about all of the different issues. They break them out into categories, but they're the ambassadors. We realized, and they do a great job, because they come to us and they give us an entire report at the end of the year about what their recommendations are for procedures, for policy, for things that need to change, whether it's discipline issues or dress code or school safety.
And what do you actually do with that? So they tell you all this stuff. Can you give me a specific example? Like an advisory group that changed something for you, that you took and said, it was that way, but these young folks, they want it this way, so we got to change that.
Yes.
I have an example of that.
Yes, so we just changed the dress code, and that was one of the things that they really came back to us and said. They were like, I know what you're saying about this dress code, but we need to be comfortable. We have a lot going on in life, and we just need to be comfortable in school so we can do our work and just get through the day. And we took that back and we rewrote the dress code policy. It's only one. They also came to us and said, hey, listen, you guys are organizing school activities on some of our religious holidays, and you're not thinking about us. Or, you're not giving us the space, to, observe our practices. And so we changed those rules.
Yeah.
They talked to us a lot about school safety.
So do you get your information about what students and young people want? Does that primarily come from the advisory boards for you, or do you have other channels where you engage?
Well, some of the schools have, little media outlets like.
But it's usually formalized outlets that you're using, or?
Students reach out all the time. Like
Okay.
students use to the students.
Yeah, well, so students are reaching out to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Reach out. Let's talk.
Okay.
They're not shy. It's a little.
Have any of y'all used Let's Talk?
No?
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Keep going. Yes.
It's a platform that you can use. You just go and anybody can submit a question and it comes to us and then we answer.
What I'm trying to get at, right, is that there are formalized systems of community engagement and participation in this city. We talk a lot about, we want to hear the voices of young folks. Can you raise your hand if you feel like your voice is actually heard by your elected officials? You do. So tell me your name and how you actually feel that you've been heard by someone who's elected. Like, what did you tell them and what did they do?
No, I didn't think you meant it that. I thought you meant I feel like them would all have heard, listen to what I had to say.
Yeah. So when you want to talk to someone who is elected, you do that right now.
I don't.
You don't talk to anyone elected. Does any of the young folks here, does anyone talk to their elected official? Okay. So let's ground ourselves in that. As much as we want to say, we got this engagement option, that engagement option, we got these themes. Well, what I'm hearing from some of the most brilliant young folks I know is that they're not using those. So ground me, Tamara, in what we're doing right now is not working. What you and the current elected school members are doing is not working to engage young people, at least these young folks. Tell me what needs to change? If you are elected, what's something you could advocate for? What's an actual anchor of change that you can do to make sure that the young folks actually want to engage with their government and engage?
One of the things that we realized, that because kids came back to us and said, we were not reaching enough students. We're not reaching, we're only reaching, in some cases, students that would be considered normal students, right? And they wanted us to bring in, all of our students to talk about all the issues that they were having. And so they were giving us the ideas of how to expand that reach down, throughout their schools so that those voices could come up, in a real way.
And what do they suggest?
They suggested having more, like going down into even middle schools and elementary schools and really working on those, like building that kind of sense of you being a part of the government, like the school system, the school board at your schools, and giving them a real voice so that they can communicate directly to the board, just the way that the Student Advisory Council was doing with the board, so that they can have that voice.
Well, I'm going to ask one more time on this, which is, what specifically, if you are re-elected to the school board, will you do to make sure and to engage with, can you say your name? What would you specifically do to make sure that students like them are actually heard? Because you're going to have power to do that. So what specifically would you institute?
Yeah, and so just having individual conversations with the board members is not enough. That is not something that's going to amplify your voice. Giving you an actual platform to do that, like to get your, have a representation body that has a communication channel to the board, whether it's giving us a presentation. I would like to get reports directly, and to interface with students directly, the way we do currently with the Breakfast with the Board. We go to every high school, right? Every year, we go to every high school and meet with the students. And it's an unfiltered conversation. They get to tell us whatever they want. The principal doesn't have any say in it. I want to do a lot more of those.
So you want to have just more one-on-one engagement?
I do want them to be organized, because I think you amplify your voice when you organize. When you make yourself organized and you become a force.
Got it. Shivy, I'm going to have you talk about that in a second, just of how you would engage folks, but I want to just give a counter question, and then I'm going to flip and ask each of you kind of what I'm talking about. I think that you have already said what your relationship and engagement with students would be. I mean, you are a teacher in the classroom, so there is a direct relationship on there with students right now. But at the same time, as an at-large member, it is not just the students, not just the communities that you have lived in, that you have marched with, that you have talked to. You are now going to have to represent the interests of the entire city of Atlanta. This is a common misconception, right? Which is, because you're running for seat 7 and you live in a particular area, that you now just represent your neighborhood, right? That is not true. As an at-large member, you are going to have to deal with Bankhead just as much as you deal with Buckhead. And what we know is that that is where the complication, particularly for at-large members, has come sometimes. Because the resources that one neighborhood may have are different than the other ones may have to be able to engage. And most times the way people answer this question is then to say, of course I'm going to listen to my neighborhood, my folks, whatever. But I want to ask you something a little bit flip, which is, for those folks who are voting in Buckhead, and also deciding on this seat, how will you be representing folks who might have a more corporate understanding of the city, or may also believe that, hey, I'm paying a lot more tax on my side of town, and I want you as my at-large to do 1, 2, 3, or 4. What is going to be your ability to balance power when you represent an entire city that may not always agree with one another?
Yeah. I think the truth is to be honest.
Okay.
And be authentic. And sometimes you have to be willing, able, and have the fortitude to tell people the hard things, even when they don't like it, even when it's not politically expedient for you to do so. I think what we have seen is that there is a huge courage deficit, especially with our board members. and that we're afraid to tell people the hard truths that they need to understand sometimes.
Okay.
And what happens is we end up kicking cans down the road. We end up not actually solving issues. We end up with leaving people with more of the bitter taste in their mouth that government doesn't work and that people don't actually listen to them because they're not actually getting real answers or action. They're just getting avoided. And so for me, it's just about having courage to tell people, what will work, what won't work. It's something that they believe would benefit them and justifiably could benefit them, that it could have a cascading effect on so many other people that would be detrimental to a bigger picture. And so that you could give people that understanding. I'm sorry I can't meet you here, but maybe I can meet you there. We need balance now.
How are we going to find, that's what I want to specifically focus on, is that balance. Because at the end of the day, we know for sure that there are some neighborhoods in Atlanta that have more resources to be able to advocate to your office, to be able to give money to things that your office may be interested if you are elected, to be able to advance forward, especially as the school board is engaging in more corporate relationships and corporate partnerships. We're seeing a lot of influence that can come in. What's going to prevent you from changing your positions on certain things? And I would love to say that you just saying I won't do it is enough, but I've been doing this now for enough time and interviewed enough people who tell me they won't do it, and then they get elected, and then we see them saying, well, the people who actually have to compromise are those who are already losing in the first place. So compromise is not always the answer. So I want to understand from you, if you are rooted in your convictions, there are certain things that need to happen, how are you going to actually be able to find balance with that, with communities that have a lot more resources, a lot more power, and will be demanding something different than you may advocate?
Let me ask you a question. What is power?
You tell me, what is power?
Right, so when we say that, because we really have to unpack that.
Yeah, I'm
right?
talking money,
So
I'm talking actual ability to, I'm talking actual votes. If we look at the voting map, right? We look at votes, we look at money, we look at the ability to actually lobby for legislation. We look at the ability to say, I want this in my school, and I'm gonna get it in my school. We know that when folks in Buckhead screamed that crime is an issue, we ended up putting 3 police precincts there to make sure that they could feel safe. And that was from a city council and a elected body that promised that they wouldn't over-compromise for neighborhoods and not forget about the neighborhoods that they were advocating for in the first place. Because when black neighborhoods and black communities have been screaming these things, year after year after year, we're just told, we'll get there. We gotta compromise. We gotta work with these folks. And all I'm trying to get at is that your role, specifically, if you were running for a district representative, this would be a different conversation, because you would represent your neighborhood. But you're not. You would be an at-large member. And what actual specific things can you put in place to ensure that your office would not be influenced by outside power that may make you compromise on wrong things?
it's my position. It's my position in our community. Before having a position on the board, I have a position in our village.
Sure.
Most of these people in this room right now are all people who know me outside of a political capacity. I'm accountable to Scotty. I'm accountable to Bam. I'm accountable to so many individuals that I could point around in this room for standing on who it is everyone knows me to be.
Yeah.
Now, I understand that integrity has wavered with so many, but to be frank with you, I don't think I reflect your typical politician. Right? So I'm not here to perpetuate the things that we have known before. So I understand the skepticism and the frustration from your perspective. I do. I genuinely do. I'm running because I share that frustration, right? For me, I've been blessed enough to be able to do good for others and do well for myself at the same time. So the desperation that many politicians have to seed money from folks and to give up their integrity and their positions because they can be paid for, I just don't share them. So it's just allow me. I don't share in many of the things that have been normalized in our politics. I'm a teacher. running for school because I care about kids, I care about our schools, I know how it works, and I understand them better than statistics, numbers, test scores, and the other analytical stuff that we go off without understanding the humanity behind the decisions we make.
Yes, that is in representative power, identity of who you are is going to matter. Additionally, when it comes to public policy work, there are decisions that you are going to have to make that are mechanical in nature, administrative in nature, that will reflect particular positions based on whether you feel a pressure or you don't feel a pressure. So my follow-up question, and I'm going to come back to you, Tim, is...
Do I get to address
Yes. I'm going to come back. Yes.
That was
I promise you, I'm coming back. I got you. Just follow me. So my question to you on this particular piece is when I look at endorsements and I look at money that's coming in to politics, a lot of what you can, it's a school night, so some of our folks gotta so no worries. What we know is, I'll just give it a second. Thanks all for being here. Thank you. So, thank you. So the question that I want to be able to ask is, when I look at endorsements and I look at money, Shivy, a lot of your endorsements come from existing elected officials, right? Folks who are in council now. Also, you have money that has come from organizations who have their own priorities and have spent a lot of money, even as IE or independent expenditure money, to be able to support your campaign as it may be. What we have found is a correlation, I'm not saying causation, right? A correlation that in campaigns, when there is a lot of endorsement and support that comes from existing elected officials and money that is coming from a lot of outside organizations, that can affect the ability for that candidate to show up as their whole self when they are elected. And I am not saying this in theory, I'm saying this in actual demonstrable data. So I would like to know, as you state, you are a different candidate, right? And you don't want to be judged or evaluated by that precedent. What specific things are you able to put in place to ensure that there will not be outside influence from existing elected officials who may be on city council or might be on the county or the state, and also influence from money that may be coming in from the outside saying, we want you to do this or that, regardless of what the community is saying. And I promise you I'm going to switch the questions as well.
That's fair. I mean, it's the same response, right? My position is with our community before it is with anyone else. Also,
why do you think other folks do that?
Just allow me. You asked me a question, give me the space.
Yeah.
Also, you have to look at my endorsements, right? My endorsements are balanced. My endorsements had people who felt one way about an issue and others who felt differently about the same issues. And if you look at my endorsements, what it shows you is that I am a bridge builder, a true bridge builder. That I'm a person who is able to create cohesion across governmental entities, across political affiliations, across political perspectives, and that's what we need in our city. So when you ask the prior question, well, how is it that you're going to be able to represent the interests of a broad spectrum of people? Well, I have the support of a broad spectrum of people because I represent a broad spectrum of folks. Let me tell you a little bit about my background. My father was born in segregation. My father was a Morehouse man, an active member of the NAACP, worked on John Lewis's first campaign. My stepfather is a white male, half Mexican, half Russian, Trump-supporting Republican. And I'm close with both of them. And break bread with both of them. In fact, probably closer to my Trump-supporting father, even though we don't share political perspectives. And having that broadened upbringing is what makes me well equipped to be able to serve citywide. What makes me well equipped to be able to navigate the different political perspectives, center humanity, find common ground, and get things done.
So where specifically, if you are elected, what specific, can we agree
What is
that?
the issue?
So,
Like, what is the
my issue is outside.
You want to know where my stance is, and
Yes.
what you would be concerned about could waive it, because if we just
So let me
hypothetically say
clarify.
it, we're not naming it.
Yeah, I'll think. We have seen time and time again. Well-intended elected officials get elected and not have the proper measures in place in their actual offices and their administrations to be able to shield from outside influence, money, lobbying, and influence that comes often between the city and the school board. What would you specifically be able to do to be able to create that divide, to make sure that you will not be necessarily influenced by outside organizations, PACs, other elected officials? Do you feel you need to have anything in there, or do you feel that that's not necessary and you would take that on?
I'm not exactly sure what those devices look like from
Okay.
your perspective. You seem to maybe have the answer.
Okay.
So I'm curious if maybe you could propose what you believe the answer is, and then maybe a good question would be whether or not I support it.
Yes, so is there money that you would not take?
Absolutely.
Okay,
And
what
there,
is
there
that?
are endorsements I have not taken.
Okay, such as?
There is, well, I'm not going to name it, but there are, let them know, sorry. There are particular people that I know some hard decisions probably will have to come down the pipe, right? And so I won't take their money, and I won't take their meetings. And as you can look, like, let's be honest, the majority of Atlanta's elected officials are supporting my campaign. It just is what it is, right? Whether it be the state senators, whether it be, except for one in my neighborhood, or whether it be city council members, or whether it be county commissioners, etc., right? But then also the community has endorsed it, right? So are we talking about that? Are we talking about the people who are actually doing the work day in and day out, and why they have such a fervor for this campaign, and why they believe in it the way that they do?
Yeah, that would be a different question. The question I'm asking is particularly about outside influence. Last part I'll say, and I'm going to turn to Tamara, and I'm going to come back to you with a question that I promised to come back on, is a lot of what that influence has become, has affected decision-making for the school board on the superintendent. So if you look at the last two superintendents, so I'll give you a real-life example that you can work through. The last two superintendents have all but suggested that their removal was highly, highly politically motivated. And in addition to that, and I think you've agreed to this in some ways, right? In addition to that, we have seen, and it is well documented, that there was a lot of influence from the city council when Maria Karstafen was superintendent and when Lisa Herring was superintendent. There was a lot of influence and push from city council members to school board members to act a particular way. And for many of them, to fire that superintendent without explanation to the public. That there is we have still not received clear explanations.
Only one of the two people up here voted for them. And
That's
I'm not that person.
I understand that. So what I'm asking you is, how do we make sure that that influence from council members who have endorsed you, who have supported you, that if they are asking you to do something like fire a superintendent, that is not something that you are going to do?
In all fairness, you're asking me a hypothetical question when you have the actuality of it next to you.
I'm going to get to that person next, right? So I'm asking you the question because you are running for office. So I want to understand how you will lead in office, because your candidacy is hypothetical.
Right.
So I need to know, if you are going to be my elected official, the person who represents me, how you are going to actually behave and make decisions inside of major moments like deciding with this superintendent.
You just have to stand on what you know is right for you.
Okay.
That's just the truth be told. Like, at the end of the day, you're asking me a question about integrity. It's a question about integrity, right? Whether or not
It's about
people,
influence politics, yes.
correct, right? But also, let's be honest about this. There are things that need to get done for kids that you cannot do solely in the school board.
Great.
Right? So like if we said we have a digital divide issue where only 25% of our kids have access to the internet at home, broadband, right? Now, if we felt like we needed to have a broadband service available to every child and every family, that is not necessarily an APS thing, although we have some channels that we've not taken advantage of and use technology to make it happen. We could do that. But the city council would have the ability to create a municipally owned 5G internet service that could be available, much like you see in Minneapolis and other cities, right? These things could happen. Teachers Village, something else that I talk about very often, and talk about since 21, is something that started in North New Jersey, right? But it took a city and school system collaboration in order to create this high-rise development with affordable living for teachers that offer community services on the ground floor, right? These type of things mean you have to have collaborative relationships across the board. If we continue to do what we did for many years on APS, which is kind of work in a silo, not have a good working relationship with the city, right? Then you end up with a whole lot of issues. We cannot answer it all or do it all for our kids alone. So if we take the position that because other people are elected, then we can't have relationships with them, then we can't. I'm just saying, right? So if the question is, could you say no to them? Then think about this. I ran against Bob, and he endorsed the campaign, right? And I don't agree with him on many things politically. One of the main reasons that I ran against him was that he voted against the racial police reform bill, right? So I stand on what I say. I stand on who I am. And I know that we have a deficit of integrity and courage in this city. I know. But we're here to restore that.
Tamara, for you, there are decisions that this school board has made that are actually the drivers and the contributors to the broken public trust. Going back to the superintendents, I watched every single person on stage who was elected all say at the first debate, all say that we believe we did the right thing and we got this right? But there still wasn't a true explanation for who this body really responds to, which is in the same vein of my questioning before. On one hand, the school board was publicly saying, wow, look at these superintendents. They're so good at what they do. They're so great. They're doing such an amazing job. There's ribbon cuttings with council. There's high fives. There's pizza parties, all this stuff happening. And then out of nowhere, it's like, oh, but we have to eliminate the contract. And the response was, well, it wasn't out of nowhere. But there was a lack of transparency in those decision making. And I think that a lot of people, the superintendent is their anchor issue for this election. That they do not believe that that incumbents actually will make a decision that is rooted in intent. Why should they re-elect you if it was someone who believed that the last two superintendents did a great job and you were a part of a body that decided to remove them?
So this is a person
who believes that the school system was, while not perfect, that the superintendents were not to be removed. What is your explanation to them that you won't just remove the next one after 2 years?
I hadn't anything to do with the previous one, because I've only been on the board. I haven't been on the board for 2 years yet. So, I didn't have anything to do with, Chris Harvey.
Sure, I understand that.
I didn't I wasn't part of bringing on the previous superintendent.
Okay.
But it was not out of nowhere. It wasn't, because all of our progress monitoring was done in public at every board meeting. And there was a lot brought up at those board meetings. Those are our abilities for the public to see how we do business, how we evaluate, how we work together. But it also had to do with the feedback we were getting from the stakeholders, the families within the school system.
So which stakeholders and how are they talking to you? Because there seems to be a divide on who actually was the school. This is my core of my question. Who are the stakeholders that the school board was responding to, and how do you know that it is representative of what the public actually wants?
We were receiving issues that were going on within schools, which we relay back. Which that is something that the school board does. It receives the feedback from constituents, from the users of the school system, and it relays it back to the administration so that they can take care of whatever needs to be taken care of in the way that they need to take care of it, because we don't micromanage that. But when we do the evaluations, we were fairly upfront when we did.
With whom? Who were you fairly
when
upfront
we came out
with?
of the superintendent's evaluation,
Okay.
we issued a statement,
To
after.
the public?
Yeah,
Okay.
outlining the areas of improvement
Okay.
that need to happen.
Okay. And was the superintendent given the time to make those improvements?
There was a time frame, yes.
And
for
how
us-
long was
for
that
us to
timeframe?
be, it was 6 months, at least, for us to be able to see changes, material changes within the serious issues that we were having.
Okay. So you believe that there was a sufficient amount of time, a sufficient amount of public transparency around the process of the superintendent, that your decision was actually, it's just that the public didn't, not everybody may have known about that, but at the end of the day, you did do that time? Like, what is the solve here? Because I think there's a fracture of, you believe you did the right thing. There's pretty general consensus that the school board was not transparent about their decision-making and their process. Are you arguing that those folks who believe that they were not transparent are wrong, and those people who believe that they didn't get that information or the superintendent didn't have enough time are wrong? Like, what is the, help me understand
Yeah, there are
this.
things that you don't play all this stuff out in public. When you do, like, any one of the people who have a job, and you have a job evaluation, it doesn't get posted on the board.
But a public official should.
They don't.
Okay,
Yeah.
but it
You get
should,
hired.
correct?
I would think it would be more
So
transparent.
now,
but we're-
it should, that's what I,
But when you walk into a job as a school board member with a superintendent.
before you go down that path, just can we agree that it should?
Yes, that's what I was saying. It should, but when you walk in and that superintendent's been hired, that stuff is baked into their contract. It is in the contract with the superintendent, how all those details are gonna be gone through. And you can't just then take that and share it with the public. So there are certain things that are written within a superintendent's contract about how the evaluation's gonna go, how much of it can be made public. And we legally cannot share more than what is in that contract.
Why do you think the superintendent, why is the superintendent extended an opportunity to stay on and then ultimately chose not to, citing a lot of the confusion that was coming from this existing board?
I don't, she did not cite that.
I think her concerns with this existing board and how she was treated throughout the process are pretty well documented at this point.
She made a decision. She made her own decision to exit the contract early.
Okay,
That was her decision.
okay. And that was not pressured by the board in any way, shape, or form. Got it. I want to ask you, Shivy, going on a little bit later. Here's what I promise. I just.
It's a long day.
Bro, I got you. Look,
Campaign, bro.
I hear you, man. And I hope this is also, I think, we're getting clearer on who both of you are as candidates and where you stand on things. And for me, I think what I have found about both of y'all's responses to answers, particularly as they're written, is one thing I will compliment about your work was you provide a lot of specific examples of what you want to do in specific scenarios. For example, when we asked you, what is it that you think, a policy that can be incorporated that would improve outcomes for young people? One example of an idea that you came was MARTA should be free for young folks. Now, I actually went through the process of writing down, asking our policy folks, is that actually possible? How would that work? What would that look like? And they were like, with the right leadership, that could happen. but it would require an intergovernmental agreement to do, right? Which intergovernmental agreements have historically been where we gotta give some and we gotta take some, right? Have you thought through how you would set up intergovernmental agreements to achieve a lot of the things that you are wanting to achieve, which, to your point, is not necessarily in the exact purview of the school board, would require outside partnership, but that intergovernmental agreement is really at the core of whether it's going to happen or not. So help me understand how you would set up intergovernmental agreements, what are non-negotiables within those intergovernmental agreements, and what role does community participation, including the young people that we talked about before, does that include, how does their voice and their decision making get included in an intergovernmental agreement?
We got to start by keeping them centered. I won't lie to you, I'm heartbroken that, the head kids are on the flyer for this event. And they're not here right now. And earlier you'd asked a question about black boys, and you had each of them be named, and had Tamara have an opportunity to address that. But the black man in the room didn't get an opportunity to talk directly to these black boys who I'm seeking to make sure have representation on the board. They don't even have the opportunity to hear any of this dialogue of what's happening now. And I think this goes into the issue. The adults are in the way. The adults have all the answers. The adults are the smartest ones in the room. Are we even paying attention to the humanity that just walked out? Could we imagine how much longer they maybe would have sat in those seats if we kept addressing them instead of talking about what the adults want to talk about? I think we got to get back to centering, why are we here? Who do we serve? And what comes first? And stop putting it off until later. Because our boys are tired of being put off. Our boys are tired of being told you deserve a voice when they have one, but we are not listening. Our students know what it is that they need. They deserve a seat on the board too. We should have a student member on our school board. That's how you ensure not that their voice is heard, but they have a seat. Same thing for our teachers. We don't need to amplify the teacher voice. Teachers need a seat. We as teachers know what we need. The students know what we need. Will we get out the way? Will we get out the way?
So intergovernmental agreements. What I'm wondering is how does that sentiment get explicitly put into intergovernmental agreements that you would want to lead on efforts and initiatives like the Marquette Initiative?
You start by not shutting down schools in predominantly black and brown neighborhoods and then turning them into apartments. That's how you do it.
Okay.
You start by making sure that you continue to have amenities and development in black and brown communities so that young black and brown people want to live there and raise their families there. Okay. We start by ending food deserts. We start by ending the digital divide. We start by making sure that Atlanta does not have only a 4% chance for a child born in poverty to exist only in poverty. We start by making sure that the city of Atlanta no longer has the worst wealth disparity gap in the United States of America. We start by making sure that when you make an agreement to do something good for somebody, that it is not at the expense of an entire community who already is without. That's how you do it.
So intergovernmental agreements are the contract that explicitly states that that will happen is a policy decision that you would need to make as a school board member. The statistics that you have touted are ones that we have been screaming for 10 years. There's no disagreement on those statistics. The question is, how do we formalize our public policy to actually address it? And I was complimenting an actual policy intervention that you provided, which is to improve transportation options for young folks. And what I'm asking you is how. And I'm wondering if it is an intergovernmental agreement, what could you advocate for to ensure that that actually happens? That's what I'm trying to understand.
No, it definitely would take funding support from the city. Okay. Right? That is something that we would have to do. You would have to.
So we get the funding from the city.
You would have to get MARTA on board. And I do believe that we could have some serious conversation about the city of Atlanta reimagining how we handle transportation, especially for our high schools, right? Tamara and I both went to high school in New Jersey. In New Jersey, you went to Connecticut, I'm sorry, did you? Went to school in New Jersey, middle school. In New Jersey, high schoolers ride public transportation. There are no school buses unless you live 2.5 miles away from the school. And I know this because I had to petition my school to reward a school bus to my neighborhood, which we deserved, and we were disenfranchised. So I grew up knowing what it feels like to be disenfranchised and had to advocate for what is correct. There is a way in which we would be able, I believe, to have MARTA specific for APS kids with pathways that would ease a lot of the transportation burden that we have.
So money would come from the city.
There has to be a combination. Look, I'm not going to profess to have all of the formulaic answer to how the policy would break down for us to say, okay, APS is going to put in this amount of money, the MARTA is going to put in this much money, CITY is going to put in this much money, right? I'm not going to give you fuzzy math to sound right, but what I will say is that it is something that you could work towards and work for. It's not above the pale. You'll see kids at Woodward riding MARTA, right? Every day. It's normalized, right? So we also have to think about, we have so much traffic and transportation issue in the city of Atlanta, and why is it so bad? We have a culture of believing that public transportation is only for a certain socioeconomic segment of people, right? And the only way for us to ever remedy or change that is to change our culture around how we use public transportation so that people experience the public goods throughout our city the right way. Right? So it is going to require a culture shift and a change on our behalf. Now, to get it done, yes, some people, so you're going to have to give and you're going to have to take. But what I will say is this: I won't be focusing affordable living on the south side of town. I won't be selling out our schools to do it. Right? So I just want to be clear about that.
Yes, that's fine. Right? I think that the question is whether we are able to actually move. What we're trying to get away from in our school board is having people who have good problem identification, but not good solution design. And what we have is a lot of people who understand problems, but don't understand solution design. You've been in there for 22 months, Tamara. You talk about the literacy policy that you move forward, but so much of the literacy policy is dependent on so many external factors. But let's take the concept of standing on leadership, being able to say, I believe this thing should happen, the most innovative, big thing that we want to do. I think in some ways when I read your answers, right, what I see is someone who understands the mechanics, but not someone who makes me actually understand whether you're going to do. Is there always going to be a mechanical conversation with you on, well, we would, but then we have to go get the this and that, and I'm being myself now, right? We got to do an intergovernmental agreement, and we got to do this, and we got to do that. Oftentimes we harp on the mechanics to get there, and don't have the leadership to say, we're going to do this by any means necessary. It's been 22 months, so I'm not sure that we have an example of that for you, unless you want to share one. But if you were elected, what would that be for you? What is the courageous idea? What is the big idea that comes from Tamara Jones as a elected official that represents my kids and my community?
There are several, but big ideas are only as good as your ability to implement them. And so you have to know what your tools are, what they are. And intergovernmental agreements is something that we are exploring right now. We're hashing out intergovernmental agreement with the city to do the very thing with our surplus properties, which we realize that we are stewards of public land. And we have properties that have sat in neighborhoods for years. And we're trying to figure out a way to use that in a publicly responsible way, with public input, so that we can benefit the public good. One of the ways to do that is to work with the city. They're writing an intergovernmental agreement. So
but intergovernmental agreements are also where a lot of damage gets done, right?
Yes,
So
that's why you start cautiously. So you can start with a project or a two projects.
So what are you starting with? Give me the thing. Like get me amped up. Like Tamara Jones is going to introduce intergovernmental agreement. Well, we're not doing community engagement yet. So like, what are you gonna do? Get me to where? What are you? Yeah, what's the big win, Tamara? Where are we
Well,
going?
it's got to be literacy. I mean, it has to be the literacy.
Okay, but what do you mean by that? Like,
So,
what do you want to do about it?
You have to know that literacy that takes, as you said, a lot of different things to make it work. It takes, one of the things we never had was policy. We did have, administrative plans, and they may not have been followed. We did monitor progress. It was never made. So policy was absolutely necessary to provide that kind of guidance. And then we knew that that was also going to have to be followed up with changing your goals and your guardrails, narrowing in on what you want to focus on, moving the budget over. It's a multi-pronged approach. It just takes that, but you have to get people excited.
But that's always been the goal of our school board, is supposed to have mechanics, and overall the vision of the school board is about ensuring literacy. That's just a restatement of the vision and the mission of the Atlanta School Board. But what I'm looking for is the mission and the vision of your candidacy, and for you to be able to say, if I'm reelected, I'm going to be able to drive this big thing forward, whether it happens or not. Like, at least I'm going to fight for it. And so for you, you're saying that is literacy policy.
It's the literacy policy. There's also the attendance policy. We've got to work on that because we have chronic absenteeism rate that isn't going away.
Yeah.
And we have to get with our students and our families and figure out what it is that we have to reimagine, re-envision. What barriers do we have to remove or uncover that we don't even know about yet? Yeah. So there's a lot that we have to handle in that. But when you talk about one of the things that I would really like to achieve, and that is using the collaboration with the stakeholders, the teachers, the students, to work together to make these things happen. When you say people don't feel heard, and they don't feel like they're part of the process because we haven't made them part of the process. And so when we did this literacy policy, going out to the community and saying, hey, work with us on what do you think you should say?
We're going to talk about community engagement right now as our last topic, and then we'll have, if there are a couple questions, then we'll close out, right? So I want to talk about community engagement and participation. Even an event like tonight, y'all's campaigns have scheduling challenges. This is the time you could make it, right? But to the point, this is a very difficult problem that the school board has had for a very long time, which is finding the right time, the right way, the right processes to be able to engage the general public outside of major events or crises, right? That it shouldn't be a crisis moment that community has to come together. There has to actually be a culture of community engagement and participation. So, Shivy, I think that you're running on changing things up a bit. So, right now, tell me how you would change up the way that Seat 7 engages the public at large, not just in moments and events, but throughout it. Give me a glimpse into, you can put your feet up on the desk. I don't know if y'all have desks, but like, you're in January, you've been sworn in. What does it look like? Where are we seeing you? How are you engaging with the public? How are you creating a culture of community engagement and participation as an elected official? What does that look like?
So to me, there's a myriad of things that could happen and should happen. What I know is with my students, you have to have a myriad of ways to be able to engage them, right? Some folks email work, some folks text work, some folks a DM on Instagram work, right? We all have different modes, and so we have to make sure we're meeting parents, families, stakeholders among the different channels, right? So if you're having summits in person on a regular basis, where you're having working sessions, where you're breaking down policy, where we're talking about problems, pain points, opportunities, best practices, and sharing those ideas. Where we're doing professional developments that are robust, fun, engaging for parents, for teachers, throughout, right? And those are some of the areas where I have strength and I have experience doing them. In fact, we're doing a teacher conference in Las Vegas with 3,000 teachers in January. We just did one in Dallas, Texas.
When you say we, who are you talking?
So I work at an organization called Get Your Teacher. And we produce professional developments for educators throughout the country. In fact, Get Your Teacher has a statewide contract with Indiana. And so bringing in, also they're Atlanta-based. So bringing those talents and those resources to Atlanta is one of the ways that we create one of the most engaging places to be a teacher. And to even raise a child. So we have to start creating fun, engaging events on the ground throughout all of our neighborhoods, throughout the city, giving folks an opportunity to talk directly, right? The other thing is you gotta actually be in the community. Most folks can't name 2 people on our school board. They can't. Most folks couldn't recognize them if they saw them in the grocery store next to them, right? So what I believe is important is, number one, making sure that you have school board members that are even visible, who you see regularly in your school, who is willing to show up at the games, who's willing to show up right there in different areas throughout town, who's not just locked into one place. And that's one of the reasons why I ran citywide in the first place. It's because my relationships span across the entirety of our city, from one neighborhood to the next. And that is what is so important, because the needs are so nuanced and so different. The choices that people make in different parts of town, very different.
So are you doing this on what does it look like mechanically for you to do that, right? There's only one of you, right? So you can only be in so many places at once. So what does it mean to have a culture of civic participation and engagement in your administration, even when I may disagree with you, which would never happen between us, right? What would, if I call you, and what does that look like? What does it mean? How am I engaging? Do I gotta go through 6 channels to get to you? Like, what is the way that I'm engaging?
So, look, and this may irritate some folks, but the truth is that, I have a benefit of a large platform. So for me, once we're done with this campaign, we bring back what I always do on Thursdays and on Tuesdays, which is my Teacher Talk live sessions that we have on Instagram, where anyone and everyone, almost everybody's on Instagram, can pick up their phone, can tap in, can call right into the live and speak to me directly. I think that level of transparency and open exposure to where you're not just having conversations in silo, but you're having them in the public sphere, it really normalizing it, not trying to overcomplicate it. Those are one of the types of channels where you could create a culture of regular engagement and opportunity to be heard directly from the person that you voted for or did.
Tamara, tell me, for you, what does I think the 3 of us agree that community engagement is broken right now. He's given us some mechanical things that he would do to improve community engagement with you. Now imagine you're reelected, you got your boots up on the metaphorical desk, right? What's for you, how are you going to, knowing that this is a big issue, how are you going to change community engagement and participation mechanically?
First, you have to build something that's going to outlive you. Like, you can't walk away and take your platform when you leave the office. You have to build something within the organization that's going to continue, that people can count on, they can rely on. And that's the hardest part about being an at-large board member, is making sure that you are available and that you can be and know and see what's going on. The best way to build that trust and to have that community engagement is to actually work together. Like, do actually real work together. So the regional meetings that we just started having, so this was an outgrowth of I served on a board development committee. And we talked a lot about the fact that the board as a whole needed to have an engagement strategy for ourselves, because for years and years it's just been whatever individual board members wanted to. Right, and we just needed to have something so that people could expect, here's how you're going to engage with your board. And so we added these regional meetings that we just had, and that's how we did the feedback, or part of the feedback sessions with the literacy policy. And, hashed out not only that, but the superintendent and then, everything that was going on, Dr. Battle's first 60 days. And just doing these little work sessions together, like a summit. It was incredibly productive and without, exception, when we asked people, what do you want to see more of? They said this exact coming together and doing work together on a regular basis.
What about the people who are not there? Because I think the vast majority of people aren't having that experience.
Right.
So how are you going to reach them?
So we do have to, have different platforms, of course, and those things were streamed as well, and so you can get into the chat. Another really effective way for an at-large board member to engage with all the different clusters is to participate, go and attend the cluster advisory team. So every cluster has a cluster advisory team. They talk about what's going on in the cluster. You can figure out where their pain points are, what their issues are, what's burning for them right now, what they need. And it's a really good way to get your finger on the pulse of what's going on in each different cluster. So attending those, and they're almost always on Zoom, and just making yourself available to answer questions, but being in a room with the administration like that and the parents and the constituents, and knowing that it's a regular doing business kind of thing, it's predictable, it's on your calendar, you know that you're going to have that opportunity to interface with your board member. We need to have much more of those. We do once a year, listening sessions with the at-large board members, and that was a long-standing thing. I didn't find that particularly effective, but doing work together across the district is the way. Just do business together. Don't have parties, fun things too, yes, to build community, to build excitement, but just do work together.
We're going to open it up for a few questions. Number one, if you are with a campaign, we ask that you reserve your question to just let other folks who may just not necessarily be here with the campaign itself. Of course, you are welcome to ask a question as well. Just want to give some priority in time. We did collect questions from the folks who did come from Hague. They were here early and they were engaging with us before that. So we have some of those questions that we could draw from as well. But wanted to just give about 5-10 minutes for some open questions, and then we'll close out. So are there questions from the audience? Yes, if you could stand, state your name, and if you could direct your question, if it's either to one person or the other, and just know I'm going to repeat the question just for the live, and then we'll turn it back. Okay.
Hi, I'm Heather. I'm a freshman at Raymond Jackson. My question for both of you is, how do you plan to educate and involve high school and middle school students, or any students at that in the APS system, in the APS school board? You mentioned involving students on the board and wanting black boys inside rooms like this, but unfortunately, that has not been stitched into your campaign personally. I've been looking on the social media platforms, I've been looking at some of the news reports, and I haven't seen that stitched in your campaigns, specifically in high school. I'm in high school, and I haven't seen a lot of engagements in high schools in APS. I'm specifically interested in that. And in addition to that, you mentioned black boys, and there are also black women who are in politics and are specifically in APS. There's the son of royalties here. They have, the KSC has a really good SGA. They could have been involved here. Maynard has extracurricular clubs that could have been involved here. Why was that not stitched in your campaign? That would have looked good, because you said, oh, I want these black boys here. I want to be the man in this APS board, but unfortunately that has not been reciprocated to me. So respectfully, how am I supposed to sit with the idea of involvement, but you don't fully show me that during your campaign?
So, to clarify, is your question specifically for Shivy?
It's directly towards you, because you didn't say anything about it. So I would like to hear your opinion, because I didn't get that from you. But due to the fact that I only got opinions from him, that was that.
Okay, so we'll let Shivy answer the question, since the question is directed to him. So Shivy, just to summarize, because I'm not going to try to repeat what was
I got it.
It's more for the live side,
We heard it.
the kids.
We heard it.
Oh, you can hear it. Oh my God, look at this. Innovation, the Center for Civic Innovation, apparently. So we do have a question. Thank you for the question. If you could respond.
Sister, your name again?
Highly?
Highly?
Yes.
Highly, it's an honor to meet you. My son was a junior at your school, Bryce Brooks. who passed away. I spent my last 13 years heavily invested in the Jackson cluster. Many of the kids we go to school with are kids who I coach. I learned baseball, basketball, swimming, baseball, football, basketball, right? So I have relationships with many kids throughout your school, Nehemiah being one of them, who we've actually had many Jackson students canvass for our campaign. Now, if your wish were to be a part of this campaign and be involved in this campaign, I'd be more than happy to have you. You seem to be a very outspoken, outstanding, courageous young woman. And I think that is to be applauded. I do not speak up for Black boys to be an erasure for anybody else. And I think part of what is tough for society is folks are so accustomed to seeing somebody be for something and adversely being a bit against everything else. We can be for something and something that is in deep need and not be against anyone else, and then not also be an erasure either. The truth of the matter is that Black boys are the most vulnerable population in the city of Atlanta. They are the ones who are most adjudicated, most incarcerated, who have the most need when it comes to their educational outcomes. I agree with you. Our girls deserve attention too. There is you'll get no argument from me about that. What I do know is we also have to have the courage to name where our pain points are and where we need the most improvement sometimes. We gotta name them. And so that's what I did. I'm naming what I see. When my son passed away, and I don't know if you know Bryce's story or not. Right. So when my son passed away, and this board decided to honor the Bryce Brooks Foundation, the work that we do to provide swimming lessons for children and adults, the work that we do to provide free lifeguard certifications to any teenager that's seeking to become a lifeguard. What happened when we went to that dais is that I looked up there and could see no reflection of a Black father. I could see no reflection of our boys. And to be frank with you, our boys are 1 in 3 of every student that we serve in Atlanta public schools. But they're getting the least of the outcomes. So if we don't speak up for our boys, then who will? And because we speak up for our boys, it should never feel like it is ignoring the fact that so many others need to. Because you do. Our Black girls deserve so much attention. We have conversations in my class on a regular basis about the fact that even for a Black woman to have legal protection to wear your hair as it grows from your head is an issue. And these are things that we don't systemically take care of to protect you all. That you are, as a young woman, adultified in ways that you should not be adultified. That we have sex trafficking issues in our city at rates that we don't see in other cities. We have many issues that we need to address when it comes to the things that our young girls need, on top of the enrichments and engagements. I'm not perfect. I'm not going to get it all right. I do receive your feedback, but I think we judge people not on what they miss. We judge people on how they miss on the spark. So judge me on that. And I promise you there'll be a response out of me and a responsiveness to make sure that there is an inclusion about some policies specifically around our boys, policies around our girls, policies around what we need to have a more culturally responsive school system.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Shivy. Yes, if you could say your name.
Yes, my name is Shivy, and I'm really proud because I
She literally said, "Is this Miss Shiny now?"
It's me. So this is my baby. I was her principal for several years. And so it makes me really happy, number one, to hear her voice because she has such a powerful voice. But also to hear that she's now at Maynard Jackson. And so that means that we had a family who we got to love and educate and serve at KID. And now they're at Maynard Jackson. The mayor has a vision for one Atlanta. That has to start with our schools, one system of schools. And families deserve choice. So my question to both candidates is, how will you protect our families' access to choice?
Thank you for asking that question. Tamara, we'll start with you.
Sure, and I've said often that, Atlanta has the most choice in any school system in the state of Georgia. And it is something, that we have. And not only, as you refer to a charter school, Right, so not only do we have charter schools, but we also have all but a couple of our traditional schools are open for choice transfers every year. So there is a lot of choice, in the city of Atlanta. But you're right in the sense of unifying the city. That is one of the most important roles of an at-large board member, is making sure that we do talk about the unity of the city, that we don't pit schools or communities or particular parts of town against each other, because that's toxic. It really is, and it's one of the other reasons why I decided to run this board. Because people are capable of having adult conversations and getting to know each other and understanding that what we do affects someone else. So it's not just about what I do, what I choose, but like you say, what you have done, with your school, here transferred over to Jackson, right? We always have to keep that in mind, because it is a system. So if you push somewhere, something else moves. So having that holistic view, you cannot live in a bubble, And so that is one of the biggest things we have to do as a school system, is really think about ourselves as part of one whole. We're not always going to agree on things. We can disagree on different ways of tackling things, but we are part of a system, and we don't get to just check out and say, oh, we're just going to be over here, doing our own thing, because what your own thing affects somebody else's thing, and in reality, it's all of ours.
Shivy, your views on school choice?
Yeah. For me, this is a conversation that from one neighborhood or one side of town will have a different flavor, depending on where you are. I started my family living off of Ashburn and Eastlake, and my son started school at Eastlake Elementary. And when I went back to finish my undergrad, I was working aftercare. Well, actually, I was working at the YMCA and coaching football and teaching swimming lessons and PE for Charles Drew Charter. I had opportunity to work there for 6 years. But then I started working aftercare at Wesley International as I was finishing my undergrad. And so it gave me exposure to some of the schools and the charter schools that we had, especially in the Southeast Atlanta area. And it became family for me at Wesley. It became family for me at Drew. The same way that it has, as my son matriculated to Mayor Jackson. What is true is that we have to be responsible about these charters. When you allow charters to go towards for-profit entities, it can cause a lot of problems, especially if they treat it as a real estate play. All right, where they own the land and buy the land and they lease the land to the school. I remember when Wesley was managed by Imagine Schools, we were paying $1 million a year lease. $1 million a year. That's $1 million not going to teacher salaries, not going to instruction, not going to resources. That was very problematic. And what we did was we put a nonprofit board over the school, separated from the for-profit entity. We moved our school to the Ed Cook building on Memorial Drive for a $10 per year lease. Now, my home is 100 yards from the campus that Wesley was on. We moved the school 2 miles away. That was not at a benefit to my family. But we supported the initiative because it was what was best for the school. It was what was best for our community. Because at the same time, just a quarter mile down the road is Benteen Elementary. And Benteen Elementary, since I've lived in Custom McDonald Guys for the last 14 years, has always been one of the neighborhood schools in the Jackson cluster that's been on the bubble to be closed due to low enrollment. And a lot of that has to do with the proximity of having charter schools right next to your neighborhood schools. And so APS has to be diligent, intentional, and on purpose about making sure that we are not causing harm to our traditional neighborhood schools because of our ambitions with charters. I also feel like we gotta be more courageous when it comes to the charters that are not serving our school system well. If we're not getting outcomes, then we got to, at some point, pull it back.
There's one more piece of this, though, And those are things that we don't control, and that's the state charter schools, because we're starting to see a lot more of them, in the school system. And that same building that's down the street from Benteen has a state charter school in it that continues to suppress the enrollment of that school. So while we can't really have that conversation and bring the state or that school into, our, bigger, global picture, that is a factor, and it's something that's always going to continue to affect us.
Time for just a word. Good? Good? Yes, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Nicole Shelton. I have a question for both of you about the young people in the city. So I identify as part of the age block of 18 to 24, and so thinking about students, who graduate from APS and then who become contributing members of Atlanta. I'm not an Atlanta native, but a lot of my great friends who I made through college and I came here to go to Brecksburg live here in Atlanta, and they often express to me in our conversations about wanting to find ways to be involved with other students and in the education space. So beyond choosing a pathway for teaching or something like that, I'm curious how both of y'all would directly tap into the young energy in the city for folks that want to tutor or volunteer or mentor students at APS so that they have younger faces and people that are more in close proximity with them, engaging and showing what life could look like beyond the school walls. I think that's so important. Would love to hear that from both of you.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest opportunities for our school system is what we're doing with our children between the hours of 4 and 8 o'clock, right? And the between the hours of 4 and 8 o'clock, unfortunately, is when we lose too many to gun violence, streets, gangs, etc. And what I envision for Atlanta Public Schools is a much more robust relationship with nonprofit organizations and mentorship organizations, as well as a tighter relationship with the city, so that we can use recreation centers, we can use our county libraries, we can use certain facilities more robustly to put in programming at the neighborhood level. Because the truth is that when we implement great programs, but we don't have transportation, it's all for naught. All right, and the way our schools are set up, if you're not catching that bus to go home directly after school, you got to figure it out. And I think it's unfair and it's disenfranchising, and it hinders the reality of great ideas and great partnerships. Because even if we brought you in, if the kids can't make it home, they're not going to come. So I think at the same time we have to be comprehensive about how we address these issues. But I think one of the greatest opportunities we have is to make sure that there are more mentorship opportunities. What our kids lack more than resources is network.
So what if,
Yes.
Yeah. So one of the things.
You said both, that's correct.
Yeah. Before we got started, I was talking to the boys from Pay and was just so impressed with everything they were telling me about how the mentoring that they've received through Pay, they feel the responsibility to pass it on. And that kind of pollination, just keeping it carrying on, that is what's going to improve the human condition. And one of the things we heard from the Student Advisory Council in APS was the desire, and this also came out at breakfast with the board, with the high school students, the desire of high school students to mentor the ninth graders, like the incoming ninth graders, but also the middle school students. And where I see an opportunity in what you're saying is for the people in your age group, my older two kids are in that age group, to mentor the mentors, mentor the peer mentors. And we have those types of programs starting right now, because that's another thing we had to do to change policy so that they could earn their community service hours by mentoring inside the school, because there for a while they were not able to earn community service hours on school property, right? So we're expanding this mentorship program, and I think that's an amazing idea, is to get one, just a little bit older to mentor those that are in high school who are about to embark on what you're doing, and then have them reach down to the middle schoolers. So you can try to build up that transition and let them know that they're not alone.
and that other people understand.
Last question. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Davita Huntley, and I think I can take a personal privilege as I'm the only person who's been in your seat. I'm a former runoff candidate for school board. 2019, I ran for District 2 school board out of 9 candidates. I finished number 2. So my question to you both is, I know your number one job is to manage, hire, and evaluate the superintendent. And we are now again, when I ran in 2019, we were getting ready to hire the superintendent, and now you all. One of you will be sitting on the board to hire a new superintendent. What are the top 3 components that are non-negotiable when hiring this individual? That will do most of the things that people in the audience have asked about, and you will be able to possibly influence, because that's just how we think about it.
Do you mind, for the sake of time, for me to have them say the top thing? And also, the good news is that both of them have actually answered this exact question in a job application. No, thank you. I just want, so I don't want to take away the question, because it's a great question. Would love for you to say the top, you gotta put a little top 2 in there. Do a little top 2. If that's necessary, all good. But just what is the, because I think at the core of the question is like, what is the metric of success? Like, what is it? How do we know that this is the right person? So should you kick this off?
Well, so the question is like the right person to hire or the right things they're focused on, like qualifications of the person or experiences of the person, or are you asking for what is their focus? Like
both of them. So what is your candidate look like?
Yeah. So why don't we do that top quality and
so for me, it has to be somebody who has lived in Atlanta, been a part of Atlanta, and knows Atlanta. That's so important because we're a city of neighborhoods, and if you don't understand the nuances of the city, you're gonna trip and stumble on your face all over the place, and it's gonna be a problem, right? The other thing for me is they have to have been a teacher. They have to have been a principal, because the teacher knows how the school works at the base level. But a principal also has the ability to understand what it looks like to navigate across central office as well as inside of the school, right? In terms of their focus, has to be literacy, which is super, super important because listen, all things aside, if our kids can't read, they're not going to be able to grasp any of the rest of it. The other thing that they have to be focused on is culture and climate. You gotta be focused on culture and climate. What I know from the teacher community, there's so many teachers, if you say, would you go work in Atlanta? I'm not going to work in Atlanta. Right? Because of the culture and the climate of what it feels like to work as a teacher in our school. So this superintendent would have to be hyper-focused on making sure that we have strong principals that are the type of people who create warm and supportive environments for teachers to be able to innovate, to have autonomy in their classroom, to be able to teach the truth. Right? So that we have principals who retain educators, so we're not spending so much money having to continually turn over teachers. Year after year after year after year, right? So those things to me are key and super important. If we're paying teachers well, but the culture isn't right, we're still gonna lose, right? If we are not focused on literacy, our outcomes for our babies across math, across science, across social studies will never be what they should be, right? And if this person does not understand the nuances of what it means to be in this city of Atlanta, to know the differences between one side of town or another side of town, or the differences of the needs, they're not going to really know how to best serve all of our kids. So I think those qualities and those traits will be the best things for us to do and get in a superintendent.
So all of that, I agree with. One of the biggest ones is somebody that views their role as a superintendent and the role of administration as support. And that goes to the culture and climate piece of it. Too many times, for many, many years, it has felt like command and control, enforcement and compliance. And what people want is support. And that is the kind of mindset that I'm looking for in a superintendent. Somebody that is really focused on supporting the people who are doing the work. That is huge. The other thing I'm looking for is someone that is willing to take in these groups that you're talking about, like the SGAs, you know, the student advisory councils, our GO teams, our PTAs, you know, all of the people who are on the ground day to day in each and every school, and take them in as partners in decision making, and really treat them that way, because they feel left out, they feel like they don't have a voice, and they don't have an active role. So somebody that's willing to forge that kind of partnership and not be afraid of it. That's another thing that I saw over all my years in APS, is just that, you know, keep them over here, you know, you gotta keep them over here, you know, control your parents, you know, kind of thing. No, we have, just like PTAs harness the power of volunteers, we can harness the power of everybody that's so profoundly invested in our schools and in our children. And I don't want somebody that's afraid to do that.
Do you, yes or no, do you think Dr. Battle should be retained?
I mean, the question is, does Dr. Battle stay in the position?
But if she did, do you think she's the right person for the job?
I'm not sure yet. I mean, there is first of all, let's be honest about where we are in the process. A firm has been hired, right? So a search for the next superintendent, it will happen. Now, I think the big question is, does Dr. Battle want to apply for the job, retain the job, right? So then I think that changes a whole lot of conversation.
What about you? You've worked, I mean, you're part of the team that said that she should be your own superintendent. Do you think she should stay?
If she decides she wants to apply for the job, she will. We have the process going on right now, but we're not going to stop it. You know, so if she decides, and we go through the process, you know, everybody goes through the process.
Do you think she's done a good job so
far? I do. I really do. And I think one of the interesting parts about us right now, which gives me a lot of hope, is that we have an interim superintendent for a whole year who has 20 years of experience in APS. We have not had that before. We had Errol Davis, but he did not have experience in APS. And so she's able to go in there, and she's got some of the same mindsets that I mentioned to you before, and start to pave the way, whether it's her or somebody else. Sure. Paving that way. She's got a good working relationship with the board. We agree on a lot of things.
What's your evaluation, Shivy, on Dr. Battle from the outside?
No, Dr. Battle is the antithesis of a lot of the things that I'm saying we need in our superintendent. She worked in the classroom. She was a principal. She worked in APS, right? So
she's exactly not the antithesis, but
I mean, right. So that you see the results that you get when you hire people who have done the job before. I'll leave it right there.
So you think she's doing a good job? Got it. Last piece here. We have no more time for questions yet. We gotta get these. It is a school night for all of us, right? So, do you have someone here supporting you in the audience? Maybe you came with your friend, Shivy. I know you have your family with you, your students with you as well. I want you to just, if you don't mind, I would love to ask if your friend would give us a quick, why should we support your friend here? And this was not, my team hates me. Yeah, so trust me, I'm already in trouble here. But I didn't ask you. I don't know who you are. I genuinely would love to hear from you, just very quickly, a few things that your friend has not said that you think people need to know when they're making a decision about her as a candidate.
Number one, I'm like a sea of the other people. But some of the things, I sit back here and I think when she says things, and I was like, you know, when he talks about what I get from you is procedures, I was like, what you get from her is procedures because I think it's her architect mind. You build a floor that you can build on and you can build on. I've worked with her, and in a lot of ways I worked for her because I was a teacher when her kids were in my school. And so we became friends because I was like, I need this done. And one of the things that all teachers know is that you have no power, but you can whisper to that parent who has the power. And she would go out into the world like, we're gonna make it right for all the students. And we're gonna, because it's for all the students. And And I love that. And so we took that relationship outside of the classroom to diversify our swim team, you know, and then diversify the swim team in APS. And so my daughter is a swimmer, and not a lot of people look like my daughter swimming in APS, and that was important to me. And it's important to me that we understand why a lot of girls aren't swimming, because the hair situation is real. But you know, and one of the things about Tamara is she is communicating, and you know, I'm sorry I have a girl, so I'm with this girl right here. I'm like, oh yes. When my daughter walked across the stage last year, and you know, has been in school at APS and has a local parent, she knew so many of those people on the stage. My girl loved Tamara Jones. And that was it. And I was like, she spoke to all the kids. She's, you know, and she was just like, also literacy. That literacy thing was my heart. Since the first day that she was talking about running, we talked about literacy. If I cannot understand why there are children leaving second grade not able to read. Forget high school. Catch them.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you sharing that. Shivy, can you pick someone? There's, you know, look at all these people who came with random sweatshirts. Yeah, just kidding. Who would you like that could talk to voters about supporting?
I feel like I'm gonna get in trouble if I pick someone.
Right? Let someone volunteer.
I guess I'll throw it to my brother Scotty, who's being cool on the wall.
Too cool, yeah.
I believe this is his purpose. He was born to do this. He's the person that will show up and do this work for us. This is the position that he's elected to. So we're frontline activists. We show up for the community regardless of if we want to. I mean, if anyone else tells us we want to be there. We want to be in those positions. We want to be compassionate. We want to show strength. We want to honor our community. And so I think that his experience as a teacher is also fulfilled to show up for other people, and this is enough, just the next stage of part of his purpose and what he's walking within. And I've been able to see it for the last 5 years. We met through me doing a high school event where I was trying to find kids to give. I was giving him graduation suits to young black men. I put on social media, and he's following. They all tag him, and so we put our relationship in 2018. In 2020, when the pandemic hit, we were passing out pizzas to all these kids. We were sending them, just raising money and sending pizzas out $1,500 a day. We were raising money. Every kid could eat for free throughout this entire pandemic, as much as we could, raising money. So those are just examples of his compassion and his willing to do the work. And I look at it like some people just show up because it's their job. Some elected officials aren't as compassionate. If they weren't getting a paycheck, would they do this work? And so I feel that regardless if he's elected or not, he will continue to do this work for the remainder of his life.
To close with you two, about 1,500 people only have voted so far. There are more people in this room. It feels like it. Honestly, I was talking to, I rushed over here after speaking to a group of policy students, and they looked at me and said, why bother? Like, why even keep hope in this? When 7.6% of the city showed up for the school boards. 92% or so of folks decided to stay home. And in some ways we can have a very nuanced conversation about why people choose not to vote. I respect that, I see that. We can also have a conversation of how the process really disenfranchises people. I see that, and I respect that. If we had a 10%, 20%, 30% problem, that's different. We're talking about a 92% problem of folks who have lost faith or have chosen not to participate in this process. So what I would like for you to close us with is something joyful and hopeful. I would love for you to tell folks what it is why it's so important for them to show up either by Friday or next Tuesday, and what is giving you hope or joy, or has given you hope or joy throughout this process. Because this will be probably the last debate or conversation that y'all are having like this. So close us with what is giving you joy and hope through this process. So Tamara, I'll start with you. If you could just talk to those 92% of people who have stayed on, the not 1,500 people who have already voted. Talk to them and tell us what's giving you hope. Start with why they should vote, and then why you're feeling hope and joy still.
This is the future. This is the future of our world. And I think in a lot of ways we have lost our sense of public education and what its purpose is as a public good. We do this for the future of civil society. That's why we do this, to ensure the flourishing of human beings, that every human being can flourish. And when they do, it's not a zero-sum game. And we have reduced in a lot of ways through our discourse the idea of education to somewhat of a commodity. It's a product, but it isn't. It's a responsibility that we have, and if we don't take and we don't care about, then they suffer. And it's not just them. The rest, our future, all of us, we depend on them, for when we get older. So just seizing the idea of public education as a public good, that's why my grandmother was so enamored of, you shouldn't have to go live and work on, an agricultural, philanthropic to get an education, right? To owe it to people. And we owe it. And just getting back to that sense of responsibility, because it flows back. The education is not a zero-sum game. Success, those boys were saying that. They said, it was amazing to me. They said, they want success for everybody else. And they talked about how success is not a pot. It's not just a limited amount of steps, so that if I get this much success, it affects somebody else. Success is, potentially infinite, and we should want success for everyone.
What's giving you hope? Bring us home with hope.
Just that. The hearing the hope, in these boys, when they were talking about wishing for hope, joy and success for other people. But they also came back to me, and I had posted something on the internet a few days ago about the carol, tidings of good comfort and joy, and just how much was in that, because they also acknowledged that, they want people to have joy, but you have to, for someone to have joy, you have to be able to offer comfort first, because there's the weight of the world, and there's pain, and there's grief, and there's sadness, and there's toil, and just all of the heartaches and the things that we're doing on a daily basis, and that's every single one of us. And so when we go out and wish for joy, you preface it with comfort, and from the mouths of children.
Shivy, what are you going to say to these 92% of folks who aren't sure whether they're going to come out this time, and what's giving you hope in this moment?
Truth is very similar to the conversation that we were having about Martin, right? That what we do in exposing young people to a particular thing has everything to do with what they normalize in the culture of the society as they come to us. One of the biggest missteps, and I'm an American government teacher, right? Fabio, like sitting here, is my first period every day. In our civics class or American government classes, we don't teach local government. There is very little focus on municipal government and local government. We hyper-focus on 3 branches of the federal government, all that good stuff, right? We have to do a much better job as a city, as an education system, as a society, in making sure that our young people understand how our local government works, who it is that serves them, and who it is that can answer the problems or needs when they arrive. And so for me, I believe that we have to be on an intentional pathway to make sure that our young people know how government works, so that when they become 18, they're not just voting for school board, they're voting for Alfred, Shivy, Brooks, and Tamara Jones, and knowing who those individuals are. Not just going to cast a vote because you're supposed to vote, but going to cast a vote because you're doing it with a purpose. And we have to do that. So to be honest with you, I believe that so many people are not showing up because they don't even know who our board is. They're not showing up because they don't even know what our board does. While we have all these, these wonderful structures in place, these road teams and PTAs and all those things, the everyday average person is not there. And if you don't have the privilege or the ability, if you're not having to work 3 jobs, 2 jobs, didn't eat, graveyard shift to put food on the table and keep the lights on, you don't have the ability to be involved in some of those things. Some folks are just trying to make it. All right? Now, what gives me hope? What gives me hope and what brings me joy is just a few months ago I buried my son. And I see the outpouring of love and support and the keep going that keeps being thrown behind me. The support that I see from the Jackson cluster and how they vote. That DeKalb, Atlanta, and Southeast Atlanta show up the way that they do to support this campaign. To me, all things aside, all outcomes aside, it is a firm affirmation of the evidence and the impact that my work and my existence in our community has been. And my hope is to only grow and further that impact to the benefit and the good of our entire city and more. And I actually start with my very first day of school, talking to my children about the difference between purpose and passion and happiness and joy. And the truth is that joy is achieved. And every door that I knock, every hill that I climb, every sign that we put down, I have my students with me, I have my wife with me, my son with me, my friends with me, my community with me. That for me is everything because it's not about me. It's not about just one individual person. This is about a community that finally feels like we got an opportunity to make sure that teachers don't just keep being told you have a voice, but teachers are giving a position. That fathers are not just told it's important that you be here and show up, but we're given an opportunity to have some say in how everything works. Part matters. And it brings me joy and hope that God woke me up today to breathe another day so that I can see Tuesday happen and for us to celebrate in history here in City.
Y'all join me in giving these two a big round of applause. I just want to say, how grateful we are that you are taking this time to engage. We know these have been long hours. Our job is to get this information into the hands of as many people as possible. One of the greatest challenges we've seen in this year is how difficult it's been to get people engaged, that they aren't informed about what's going on, and that is central to the mission of the Center for Civic Innovation, is to have raw, honest, open conversations. So I appreciate you letting me nudge a little bit, and I don't appreciate the nudge back, but but in all seriousness, your willingness to engage, both of you, like the number of times I've seen you, I am so grateful that Atlanta still has people willing to show up for us, like in a time where the easiest thing to do is hide. We are lucky to have folks who have committed their lives to public service. I'm wishing both of you joy and happiness in this work. But also, I think what's important is that for everyone here, please make sure that their message doesn't just stay here. What's very important is that you share this out, go to the polls with 5, 6 of your friends, 10 people, whatever you need to do. We can still turn around these voter numbers, but the work is just bigger than all of us. So, A, I'm grateful. B, I hope to stay engaged with y'all, that whoever is elected, we plan to hold you to account with love and with facts and with vigor and with the responsibility that we have to community. And we want y'all to make sure that you stay engaged and stay involved. Next year is not just a presidential race. Next year is also the race for the district attorney and the sheriff and the folks that we believe have their hands on power. It is important that they represent us because even if you don't believe in government's ability to do good, it has shown us it has the ability to do harm. And so we hope that everyone is making the best decision that is best for you and your families. Thank you. We will get this up. Thanks to everyone who tuned in online. Thank you to the team who stayed late to keep this thing going. And have a great, wonderful rest of your
One